keep this where it's.
Is that the one that turns off as well?
Yeah, so we need to keep an eye on that one. All right. Hello, and welcome back to Lights Camera Podcast. I'm Zain, and this is Ramzan. And this is the podcast where we discuss and analyze different movies for your viewing pleasure. And today we're going to be talking about the movie Wind River. Just to give a quick synopsis of the movie, this is about our protagonist named Cory Lambert, who's played by Jeremy Renner, who comes across the body of a girl, and it's really just following his journey about how he tries to find out who was responsible for this, for her murder, with the help of Elizabeth Olsen.
Yeah.
And this reference is going to go straight over your head, but this is like HAWKEYE and Scarlet Witch coming together to fight evil. But you don't watch Marvel movies, so that's
this is like where your like expert knowledge of movies come in.
Oh,
and
really?
I just kind of say
it's Marvel movies. Talk about expertise.
You
there.
can explain that though.
Yeah,
later.
I'll explain that to you. The audience will understand. So that's
okay, yeah.
But just to start off, I think this is probably one of the first movies that we've actually watched before, without the intention of doing it for the podcast.
Yes.
Because we both saw it before for different reasons.
Yeah.
So for you, what made you want to go and see this movie, like otherwise?
So the reason I watched this movie is kind of perhaps not particularly glamorous reason. Rather, it's probably quite a sad reason. In that, so for me, it was basically I was starting my BSc at Imperial, and I moved into the halls like 2 days early, just to set up my stuff and get everything ready. So one of my friends had not moved in yet, and so I was by myself. No one else had moved in, and I was just like, let me go to Westfield, it's literally down the road, and I watched the trailer for Wind River, and I was like, okay, it looks good. I'll just go watch it in the cinema. So that's basically the reason why.
So you had nothing else.
So I went into the movie actually not knowing anything about it.
Okay, that's sometimes the best.
Yeah. So, and actually with this particular movie, I was really glad that happened, because probably if I knew about the movie beforehand, I probably wouldn't have gone and watched it.
Yeah.
Just because for me, it would have seemed by the description that's one of those like lame crime thriller, crime type movies. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
What about you? What was your reasons?
So for me, I came across it on Netflix, so equally as unglamorous.
Yeah.
But, and then I looked up it looked interesting, so I looked up the Rotten Tomatoes, and it had a high percentage.
Yeah.
Which isn't actually a good way to judge if a movie's good or not, but there you go.
Yeah, we all do it.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
And then I saw Jeremy Renner was in it, and I actually really like Jeremy Renner as an actor. I think he's done a lot of good movies. Obviously, he's in the Marvel movies. He's also was in this movie called The Town. And yeah, I think he's generally quite a good actor. So I was looking forward to seeing what he could do in the performance. So yeah, but after the movie, you said you're obviously glad you watched it. So am I. I think it was a good movie. It's a solid movie. And we both now watched it twice as well.
Yes.
Once just initially, and now again we rewatched it for the podcast. So let's just start off. We'll start off where the movie starts, and we kind of start off with the scene of this woman who the story is kind of based around, Natalie.
Yeah.
Running through the snow bare feet. We don't know how she got there, what's happened at this point. But for me, right off from the bat, this was a really good start, just because number one, I really like movies that are kind of set in cold environments and winters. One of my favourite movies is The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing, which is set in this this icy tundra type place. And also because it was very, very realistic about how cold certain climates can get. Because I think a lot of movies that are set in the cold underplay it, whereas this movie is a real focus of just how cold and isolated this place is.
Yeah. That's a really good point. I hadn't actually realised that. Yeah.
Which, and that's, to the movies, it kind of plays into the story as well. And it's very real.
I think, yeah, you're right actually, because in a lot of movies, often the cold is more kind of an additional thing in the movie.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Or it can sometimes be a bit more kind of comical sometimes, or just. Whereas this was really central to the movie.
Yeah.
It was like a central theme.
Yeah. And then after that, we're introduced to our main character, Cory Lambert, and we see him that he's like shooting some
wolves.
He's shooting wolves, and there's like he's protecting sheep.
Yes.
Which, if you think about it, and if you think back to that moment, well, later in the movie, it's kind of symbolic of him kind of being a protector of protector of people who aren't strong enough to protect themselves, maybe, of kind of like the weak.
Yeah, because
predators.
Yeah, because you can link it back to if we do jump, or we could, if we jump right back to the end of the movie, there's like a parallel with that.
Yeah.
Where he saves, another person in the movie, essentially, in a similar kind of fashion.
Yeah, exactly. And it's introduced to us initially, straight away, the idea that he's a hunter. And so it makes sense, everything that comes later is... And that's one thing the movie does really well, it sets things up and then delivers on them later on, which I think it did.
Yeah, I think the delivery of the movie was very good.
Yeah.
And also, actually, with the opening strong, it kind of reminded me again of when we watched Midsummer, how the movie started really, really well.
Yeah.
Like the opening scene was one that's highly emotive and gets you very quickly invested in the movie
100%,
because it has a good amount of mystery to it. It's something which is provocative, and it's very difficult then not to want to know what's happened. And whereas with Midsummer, I felt like the payoff, and firstly there wasn't much of an arc, whereas in this movie I feel there was a character development of the kind of FBI officer who we'll talk about.
Yeah.
With Midsummer, drawing the comparison, I felt there was not really much of a character arc, and the payoff was not there.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was with Midsummer, it was just like an endless build-up with no good, satisfying climax.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel with this one there was.
That's very true. Yeah, I mean, like that. The beginning of Midsummer for me highlights the best parts of Ari Aster's his name. His previous movie Hereditary. The best parts of that, in terms of like the shocking, visceral, like real life emotions. But then, like you said, it just trails off and it doesn't lead anywhere satisfactory. Whereas this movie does. And you mentioned we're one of the next main characters that we're introduced to quite a bit later in the movie, which is the FBI character. And do you think she did have a very good kind of story arc?
I think she had an arc in that, like, when you see her at the beginning, it was very, like, the first notes that I wrote about this were she's clearly someone who's very naive, and you get that big impression. She's like basically a fish out of water. She's like this kind of, pampered girl from, I think she's from LA or New York or something, and she doesn't even appreciate how cold it is. She has no appreciation of the environment that these people are living in. Whereas at the end, the way this kind of movie ends with her on the bed, after she's been injured and everything, and the last thing she says in the movie is basically, "Oh yeah, this girl ran 6 miles," and for me it felt like she was in that sense appreciating how cold the environment is and appreciating a bit. For me, that was a signal of her development over the movie. Do you see what I mean?
That's true. Yeah. I think you're right in that she changes her approach to, I guess, everything now. She's kind of been changed basically by what she's experienced, and I think they do a decent job in terms of that story about a person out of their depth who's been thrust into this environment, and they're the only one who's the new person in, and they can't bring anyone else with them, because we find out later that when they do the autopsy on Natalie, the coroner doesn't label this as a homicide. Yeah. And that's, I think, is a very clever way of putting our characters into a predicament that they can't easily get out of. And that leaves her on her own to try and deal with this, and she has to rely on Jeremy Renner's character as well to try to solve what's going on. Yeah. I think what they could have done better was, often in a lot of movies, whereas there is a character out of depth, and you see the emotional trauma that they go through, which with her you see her go through it, but I don't know if you see as much the effect that it has, if that makes sense. I think at the end it kind of does, but I've seen other movies do it a bit better.
It could be better, yeah.
So, for example, Sicario. Have you seen Sicario? No. So which is the director of this movie, Taylor Shredden,
Oh yeah,
who's the director of this movie. He's actually a writer for Sicario, which I
Oh
thought was
really?
interesting. Yeah.
Oh.
But when I was watching the movie, not knowing that, I thought that I thought that that movie did that idea better of this kind of fish out of water and seeing the effects that this trauma has.
Yes, yeah. I would agree with that. I think like I felt like there was because I kind of made that comparison with Midsummer, whereas Midsummer is an example of where there's pretty much virtually very little character arc. I think, which might have been central, which might have been actually been part of the purpose of the movie. I don't know. I don't think it is particularly. I didn't think it worked. I felt like this movie did have one, but I agree with you. Perhaps we could have had a bit more. They could have made it a bit clearer, and perhaps shown it in a better way.
Yeah. But I think all the other elements of showing the actual trauma, that they did very, very, very well.
Yeah.
So, for example, the one that sticks out in my mind is when, and it goes back to when the character was very naive, when the FBI agent and Jeremy Renner go to the family's house.
Yeah.
Do you remember that scene? The Natalie's family's house.
Yes.
And she says, and this I think was a big changing point for her as a character, when they're speaking to the dad, and they're questioning them as if like they're kind of guilty or they're seeing them as suspects in a way, and then they ask to see. She goes, "Where's the mother?" And he goes, like, "She's in the other room." She's like, Jeremy Renner's like, "No, don't go and speak to her." She's like, "No, I want to go speak to her."
Oh no, it's the it's
oh, no, you're right. It's the
police
captain.
officer. Yeah,
the police captain.
Yeah.
Because Jeremy Renner comes later.
Yeah.
The police captain says, "Don't go and speak to her." And when she walks in the room, she sees that she's like in a complete emotional state, and she's like self-harming, and she's just. It's a very, very just raw, visceral scene.
Yeah.
And then but there and then you do see the effect that it has on Elizabeth Olsen's character.
Yeah.
And then, but the whole time that father was quite stern and quite straight-faced. But as soon as he sees Jeremy Renner, you see that he just burst into tears. And he just breaks down.
Yeah.
And we also learn that his character also lost his daughter in a very similar way
circumstances.
Well. And he says something at that point. He says like, you just have to live with the pain. You can't like reject it. And you're not really gonna. It's never gonna go away.
Yeah.
And even says trying to get rid of it is like an injustice to her, which I thought was kind of like an interesting perspective.
Yeah. And I think, the movie I feel like definitely touched on, as in like a sub-theme, I think, of grieving.
Yeah.
And I think I would agree basically with, what he. I think they displayed it quite well, because it was kind of two people grieving. We kind of saw one person who, Cory, Jeremy Renner, who had gone through that, and he was at a different stage of the grieving process, you could say.
Yeah.
And he was now seeing someone, his friend, because they knew each other previously beforehand anyway, going through that. And you also see other characters. So, for example, the brother of Natalie we see.
Yeah.
So, I think they show it quite well. And the effect of that on the family.
Yeah, definitely. So we can talk about that scene actually, where they go to see her brother.
Yes. So.
Natalie's brother.
So Natalie was the person found in the snow, basically.
Yeah. We kind of talked about these characters without actually clarifying. Natalie was the woman in the opening shot who dies in the snow. And Jeremy, just to go back a bit, Jeremy Renner actually finds her body when he's out
looking for a lion.
Hunting
because that's why he's basically kind of gone to Wind River, which is this reservation.
And he actually introduced the fact that he has a son as well. Jeremy Renner's character has a son, and we are briefly introduced to his ex-wife, I assume. And we see obviously their relationship is a bit, it's not, it's a bit uneasy.
Entirely amicable, it's not.
Obviously because they both lost their daughter. But anyway, so he goes to Cory and Elizabeth Olsen's character go to the place where Natalie's brother is, and he's kind of living in like a shack or like a caravan
Yeah.
And he's basically like a kind of a bit of a druggie, and he's involved in kind of a bad group of people. And they actually tell him that he doesn't know that she's died. And when they tell him, obviously, like he reacts very upset. But then there's a conversation that happens with Jeremy Renner's character and his character in like the back of the police car.
Yeah.
And he kind of says that, look at what this place does to us. And I think he's kind of referring to like the level of isolation that they have.
Exactly. Yeah.
That he's kind of, and Jeremy Renner says, you had the best chance of anyone out of getting out of here. And I think it kind of shows how different people respond and react to that isolation or that
Yeah.
being put in that situation. So some people seem to overcome it or thrive in it, whereas other people, like her brother or like Natalie, was able to do well in it. We were given the impression that, you know, her death was unexpected and it was a tragedy.
Exactly.
Whereas with him, he was already completely off the rails.
Yeah.
And he's kind of blaming the isolation for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And actually, that theme also comes up at the end again when, you know, Pete or whatever, he says the same thing actually just before he basically dies.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, there's nothing to do here. You're on your own.
Yeah.
Blah blah blah. And I thought that was really interesting as well.
It is, yeah.
How he was saying that, and then it's also someone who is, you know, white, non-Native American saying that, and I think Cory touches on that actually. He says like, well, this is the only place that they have, like this really cold whatever land. But anyway, yeah, just before that scene actually, that when they go to the shack, they also get attacked in that scene by one of the friends of Natalie's brother, who sprays like, I don't know, it's pesticidal.
I think this is pepper spray.
Yeah, might be pepper spray. And what did you think of that scene?
I thought that was very well done in terms of, it wasn't like over the top action.
Yeah.
And even all the action scenes were very grounded.
Yeah.
But it was very tense. And there were stakes.
Yeah.
And again, it was another turning point for the FBI agent, because she wasn't expecting any of this, and she's thrown into the situation where not only she has to like defend herself, but she's also been disabled. You know, they've pepper sprayed her in the eyes, so she doesn't got all of her faculties.
Yeah.
And you see how she responds to that. What did you think of like the police sergeant's character, like the main guy?
Yeah, that was quite interesting. It's a good question. I feel like he was more kind of, he'd become so resigned to the fact that they were quite powerless there, because, you know, the police force was really understaffed.
Yeah.
They had that like medical officer who, you know, also was not always, he kind of implied was not always the most helpful, and yeah, just basically that even the chief medical, even the sergeant, whatever, like he kind of had accepted that level of like, I can't actually do that much.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree. I think he was very, I don't know if it's too harsh to say that. I thought he was quite bland as a character.
Yeah.
And maybe a bit one-dimensional.
Yeah.
So I think.
Do you think they could have made him a bit more interesting? Or do you think
I think they could have explored
him a
a
bit
bit more. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good. I think you're right.
Like
I feel like perhaps they could show him as being resigned, but put a bit more meat on there.
Yeah, at least show us why he's that way. So what is it that he has gone through that's made him so, so resigned and so withdrawn?
Yeah.
Because he just is that way, and so when it comes to the end of the movie, when he gets killed at the end of the movie.
Yeah, you don't feel as
exactly,
much.
Yeah.
Which is true. I kind of felt like I wanted to feel.
Oh, I thought you were going to say, I feel like I'm glad that you...
No. And no. It's not like Joker where... Yeah. I agree with your point. Yeah, they could have made that seem more kind of impactful.
Yeah.
If they'd built up the character a bit more.
Because I think you can have that kind of grisly scene. He's seen it all type of character, but there should be moments where he kind of lights up a bit, or has, you know, a scene where he's kind of explodes for something and says to everyone why he's this way, or like explains what the things that he's seen. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. I've seen it all. Type of thing. I think that would.
Instead, he's just he's just the same way the whole movie.
But it doesn't ruin it.
No,
Like,
no,
it doesn't ruin his
it doesn't
character,
ruin it. Overall, the movie was very good.
Yeah,
I would say like it's just these extra things would have made it better.
yeah, and the fact I think I enjoyed watching it both times as well.
Yeah.
I don't know about you. So it's definitely got rewatchability as well.
Yeah.
Especially the moment, even the emotional, impactful moments hit both times as well.
Yeah.
Even though I know what's coming and I know I've seen it before as well.
Exactly.
Okay, so actually after this bit, they actually go out to the forest again because while they're there after they've arrested them, they kind of Cory kind of looks up and he sees like he says like, oh, up there in the forest, that's where the answers are
Yeah.
because of the tracks or what, because I think they're ski tracks or whatever. And they go up there and they see like a half-eaten, like dead body basically.
Yeah, so another dead body.
And what it turns out from also speaking with Chip, who is Natalie's brother, that Natalie had a boyfriend who was a white guy who worked at kind of the oil rig.
Yeah.
And we find out that basically that dead body is Matt, so the boyfriend of Natalie.
Yeah, played by John Bernthal.
Yeah, I recognised him.
Yeah.
I've definitely seen him in other
He's
movies.
in The Walking Dead. He's in The Punisher.
Is that him?
Yeah. I really like watching him, but he plays the same character in everything. He's just like this rough and tough, like huge guy, which works, fair enough. But side point.
Yeah. Then.
But yeah, I mean, from that and also from other stuff in the movie, we learn that he's a very avid tracker as well.
Yes.
So.
Cory.
Yeah. So obviously with his hunting skills, which is why he was sent out initially to go and find the lions, because he can, track where they're going and stuff. So I think Cory's character has all the elements that make him, firstly, like capable of doing this. He's a hunter, he's a tracker, and also have the motivation, because he's lost a daughter in a similar way, and he wants to find out who's responsible for this. Because he also knew the family as well, Natalie's family. And there's a moment actually, if we just jump back quickly. When he's speaking to the father, he says, what are you going to do when you find out who's responsible? And he basically just says to them, there's no justice here, I'm going to kill them. And I think that's another like heavy theme of the movie is about justice. That what is just isn't necessarily what is objectively good, if that makes sense. So to Cory and to Natalie's father, what is just is basically an eye for an eye. They killed my daughter. We're going to kill them. And even Jeremy Renner says to the FBI agent that, when I find him, I'm not going to bring him back. And she's like, yeah, okay. So that was an interesting, I think, part of the movie as well.
Yeah, definitely.
You were saying about like when they go up the mountain.
Yeah, so I think after that bit, they then kind of form like a group, like a group of officers. So the chief officer and the FBI agent, they get like a bunch of crew together. I think there's about 4 or 5 of them, and Cory comes along as well. They ask Cory to come, and then they head over to the oil rig. And again, you can see through some of the shots that they do how isolated it is. It is very isolated. Cory actually then goes up to look for the lions. He does that first.
Does he?
Yeah.
I think he goes up to get like into a sniper's nest, but he comes across the lions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So he goes up to the sniper's nest and he comes across the lions who, just hiding there.
Yeah.
But he leaves them because I think he sees some tracks.
Yeah.
So he sees some ski tracks that up from the mountain where he is, where the dead body was found, that go down to where the oil rig is. So of course that's quite suspicious. And he can also see as the other officers and FBI lady, they're meeting the oil rig people. And I thought this was done so well. And when I first watched the movie, I had no clue what was going to happen. And this is what also a movie I felt did really well as a mystery movie. That it really I was never expecting what would happen next.
Yeah, 100%.
And also it was interesting because in some of these scenes as well, the FBI lady, she actually did show that she did have some skills in that she was the one who first said like, "Oh, why have you got a big bruise on your face?" And they were like, "Oh yeah, no, well we just we fell over onto the snow."
And also when things start to kick off, when the tension rises and everyone has their guns pulled out and everyone else, she's the one that
Calms it
de-escalates
down.
it.
Yeah, exactly. She managed to de-escalate. But what she also does in the process is tell another guy, who we still don't really know what it was he was referring to. You might know, but another officer, not FBI officer, another just like police officer, he doesn't put down his gun.
Yeah.
He keeps it up, and the FBI lady is like, "If you don't put it down now, I'm going to arrest you."
Yeah.
And he just keeps saying, "Oh no, didn't you see it? Didn't you see it?"
But as in, what's he referring to? He says that when he said that. So basically, I think they were like, because there's the police officers, and they basically go to a security outpost, and the security outpost, I guess, is their private land in a way, and they're living there, and they're staying there, and I think they start circling them.
Yeah.
So I think that's what he notices.
Oh.
So they start flanking him.
Yeah.
So that's what he's like. Wait, what's going on here? Because obviously they know why they've come there, and when they've gone there, and the police officers have gone there, are going with the presumption that they've been caused Natalie's death. So there's tension already, and then when they start doing that, it just kind of all kicks off.
Yeah. And I also found it so interesting in the fact that the level of isolation means that even them as a group of police officers, they're actually, the power balance is actually equal. Because technically, which is what happened, is that those guys could kill those police officers, and actually they probably would not have any repercussions, because there'll be no backup. There'll be no, like, they can just say, "Oh yeah, they trespassed," basically.
That's very true.
And so again, I feel like this level of isolation means that, like, it makes it very difficult for, again, partly why, again, the chief police officer would be so bitter or whatever. But yeah, do you want to say what happens?
Yeah.
after?
So well, this is again, I guess, kind of where the FBI agent's naivety again plays a negative role, where she like just knocks on the. So they go and they're like, "Where's
the
John?"
trailer? Oh yeah, where's?
Because they're told that because they get the information from Natalie's brother that John is her Matt was Natalie's boyfriend. So they're like, "Where's Matt?" And he's like, "Oh, he's sleeping in the trailer." So she goes.
Oh no. He says Matt. They don't know where Matt was.
Oh really?
Yeah. They said oh, do you know where he is? He just ran away. It's Pete, because they're like,
okay.
"Oh yeah." She said, "Can you show us to Matt's trailer?"
Yeah. Oh okay.
Yeah. Not that Matt was sleeping there.
Oh okay.
But actually, Pete is in there.
Yeah. And so she just goes up and knocks on the door, and then she gets shotgun blasted.
Yeah.
But before that, they do kind of a cut where he knocks on the door, and then we see it's a cut back to actually Natalie knocking on the door and Matt opening it.
Yeah.
And we see obviously they're together, and then everyone else has gone, and then when all the other guys come back, Pete basically starts teasing them.
Yeah.
And then Matt and Pete get into a fight, and then they all jump on Matt, and they knock both Matt and Natalie unconscious.
Yeah.
They basically attack both of them, and then Natalie manages to escape.
Yeah.
But then Matt is, I'm assuming they kill him. Yeah. Well, and that leads us back to the start of the movie. That's why Natalie was running in the snow, and that's how she ended up dying, basically. But when the FBI agent actually knocks on the door, she gets shotgun blasted. But she's wearing like a vest, so it doesn't kill her straight away. And that's when a whole gunfight, like a huge gunfight, breaks out between everyone. And the thing is also, because everyone's just standing there in the snow, there's no cover for anyone.
Yeah.
So they're literally just like, everyone's just shooting everyone. But the only one who has the advantage is, again, it plays back to the start of the movie with Jeremy Renner basically shooting them like
the wolves. Yeah, he snipes them. I think there's like 3 are left, excluding Pete.
Yeah.
And they all get sniped basically.
Yeah.
And then Pete basically runs away.
But even that scene, like, again, it's about that, the impact, because the bullets sound like rockets when they hit, and they like actually like fire them backwards.
Yeah, exactly. Through the trailer, he literally just goes blast back. And actually, that's kind of, I feel like it's kind of true from what I've seen, because those bullets are so powerful.
Yeah. They're like big.
They're huge. Yeah.
So I mean, it's really cool to see.
Yeah.
Like in
It's
terms
quite
of
and it's
action-wise,
satisfying.
It is very satisfying. Yeah. It's like, I guess that's like the Joker,
Yeah.
where you're seeing the bad guys get their repercussion.
Yeah.
But again, it's still realistic.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's not over the top.
Yeah.
And then we see when we see Jeremy Renner come back down to the FBI, he's like smiling. Do you remember?
Wait, who?
When Jeremy Renner's character comes down on the snowmobile to where the shootout was, he's like smiling.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's like, which I think to me is like this is what he enjoys. He enjoys hunting.
I can't even remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he feels like he's got his, even though she's like bleeding out on the floor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which was a bit weird. But yeah, he helps her, and then he goes after Pete.
Yeah.
And obviously we know he's a hunter, he's a tracker. He's able to, he knocks him out, and he takes him to the top of the mountain, to the top of a mountain. And it's what you said about how he has that whole talk about how this is all they have, like this isolated land that you're...
Yeah. Basically making excuses for his bad behaviour.
Yeah. And he says he's not going to shoot him, but he's going to give him the same chance that Natalie had.
Yeah.
And so he just takes his shoes and his socks and tells him to run. And he gets like 20 feet before he falls and dies.
Yeah.
When we hear that Natalie ran for like miles.
Yeah,
it just
6
shows
miles.
the difference in like the strength of spirit.
Exactly. Yeah. Again, I feel it was like showing how that guy was ultimately like a coward, basically, whereas Natalie was, was strong.
And I guess from the fact that this is her home, this is what she's used to.
Exactly. Yeah.
And again, it is that will to survive as well, I guess.
Yeah.
That
And
she had.
that again, like that, the people again, that the people who have to live there, either Native Americans, like there was again like people like Natalie can summon the will to live in that environment and also do well. Like Natalie, I think we see at the end that she had graduated, she was doing well, whatever, blah blah. So yeah.
Definitely.
And then
I think I mean we kind of mentioned it already, but how Pete says that the isolation drives you crazy, and I think it tells you something about him, because I think people who have demons or who've done certain things or are just not good people, the silences will make you reflect on yourself, and that's what drives you crazy.
Yeah.
Whereas people, and I think this is a big theme of the movie, of kind of good versus evil, kind of, or trying to be a good person in a very bitter and dark world.
Yeah.
So people like Jeremy Renner's character or Natalie are able to thrive in the silence or able to survive because they're not dealing with their own demons, I guess.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of side point. So I think that's really it. That's the movie, basically, in general. Anything else you have to add?
Yeah, not much. Just basically, at the end, the Natalie's father finds out. He tells Natalie's father, and we see like some writing which basically says that there is no like database or statistics compiled for missing Native American women.
I had no idea about that.
Yeah, which I had no idea about. So, again, feel like definitely the movie is trying to focus on also on this point as well about kind of untold stories, which it kind of does feel that way as well, because with it ending on that way, and because it's very it's a very we connect a lot with the characters. It's kind of like the telling of a story which would otherwise not be known. So
and I think it's the fact that they put that at the end. I don't think it. Sometimes, a lot of the time, movies where it's like based on true events, or it's like they really beat you with the theme or with the message, whereas this puts it at the end, but it still doesn't get in the way of telling the story.
Exactly, yeah.
So it's a good thing to have on the end, and it makes you think about it because it's kind of the last thing you see.
Yeah.
But it's not getting in the way of them trying to tell the story.
Exactly, yeah.
Which I thought was really good.
It doesn't kind of make you mean just thinking about the whole movie.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like you say, it's something at the end for you to reflect back on the movie.
Yeah, exactly. What would you say are the best bits for you? What did you like the most about this movie?
I really liked the use of like description in the movie, like the use of language. I feel like quite a lot of it is describing kind of what happened to Nato, or like descriptions which are build up the tension and the kind of that component of the mystery, because what this movie does very well is I feel like it drops information in a very good way, because it can be done in a bad way whereby it doesn't build any tension, it doesn't build any sense of mystery, it doesn't draw you in. But this movie did. It kind of, again, you find out a bit more like how Cory says, oh, this is basically how she ran, this is how she died, she died from, pulmonary hemorrhage, and then the chief medical officer, and then you find out a bit of information from the chip, and so like goes through like that. But I feel a lot of it is quite descriptive, and I thought that was really good.
So I guess you could attribute that to the script. It has a very good script.
It has a good script.
So well done, Taylor Sheridan, on the script.
Yeah, well done. Yeah. And again, I would agree with. I liked the kind of way they synergized the footage of how barren the land was, which I think was very easy to feel. You feel like you can actually, you feel it basically.
Yeah.
And along with, how the characters move around in that environment.
Yeah.
That's what I liked.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't really think about the fact that the way it's structured is very effective. And they drip feed you information, which keeps you interested but maintains the mystery.
Yeah.
That's really true. So I think the things I liked were, again, about how realistic it is on different elements. So in terms of the weather, just how cold it is, the action scenes, how grounded they are, and then also the emotional impact on the characters. Like we see how it affects Natalie's mother and father. And then there is one scene where we see Jeremy kind of break down and talk about what actually happens with his daughter.
Yes.
And a lot of the time, often with these kind of movies where there's two protagonists working together, they either fall into one of two traps. Either it ends up being just a pointless love interest, or there's a conflict that breaks out between the characters for apparent reason. And I think this movie avoids both of those.
Yeah, which is really good.
Yeah.
Which is really good.
And it just keeps the story focused because there's no need for it. And it doesn't make sense either.
Yeah, a lot of movies do that.
Yeah.
They just add it in.
Yeah. And I think, like I mentioned Sicario before, this is a movie that is like that in that it doesn't fall into that trap.
Oh yeah, you still haven't explained the Red Hawk thingy or whatever it was.
Red Hawk?
I don't know, you said this is a movie that combines Hawk or something and whatever.
Oh, Hawkeye. Okay, so those are two. Jeremy Renner plays Hawkeye in the Marvel movies, and Elizabeth Olsen plays Scarlet Witch.
Oh, okay.
So they're both in those movies, and they're both in these movies.
Okay.
You need to watch the Marvel movies, basically.
Yeah.
So I like that aspect, that they avoid those cliches or those traps. And also just that some of the themes it deals with, like the strength of the human spirit and like this kind of good versus evil, and this idea of being a protector, which Jeremy Renner's character seems to play a heavy role in. What are there any elements of the movie that you think could have been done better or that you didn't particularly like?
This is always the hardest part for me. I think I agree with the thing you said. Like having had the kind of that breakdown type thing by Jeremy Renner, I think that having the kind of inspector guy doing the same thing would have been quite good, and maybe also a bit more development of the female officer. I think that would have been quite good. I mean, other than that, I'm not too sure, to be honest. Perhaps like the thing with Pete could have gone on a bit longer. I feel like maybe there could have been like a bit more of, because I feel like he was the main antagonist, and I would have liked to have got a bit more maybe about him as a character. Perhaps kind of like in a similar way, like they do like a flashback of or whatever of him, suffering or whatever, or how, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I agree, because the bad the people who are responsible only are really introduced in the last like 20 minutes, half an hour, and their only character trait is that they're evil, really, or they're just
Yeah.
bad people. There's
Yeah.
nothing beyond that besides the just explanation we get from Pete at the end as to why, when he's kind of begging for his life.
Yeah.
But it would have meant more if we kind of saw more of that. So I agree.
Yeah.
If we saw, maybe he was a different person before and he has changed, or
Exactly.
what was it that led him? Maybe it's kind of like being in this environment with all these guys. You kind of have to survive. Like it's a very alpha
Mm.
environment, and it turns you into this type of person.
Yeah.
But I guess something a bit more in terms of, often even with the villainous characters. Okay, let's use that one. Even with the villainous characters, it helps to have some, you know,
Backstory.
yeah, or multiple character aspects. Maybe something you can relate with, or you know, but yeah. But I think where it did do well in is showing how bad they were.
Yeah, it definitely, they were definitely like unlikable characters.
So maybe there's a reason why they didn't want to include anything where you're like, oh, I can kind of see where, because their actions were not defensible at all. So yeah, things I think it could have improved. I think I've kind of mentioned some of the things I didn't like some of the characters, the police captain. He didn't really have much of an arc or much of a character beyond just being that kind of old man.
Yeah.
And then also I guess showing like I said, showing the effects that the trauma has. A scene where the character kind of just breaks down, which we get right at the very end, but I think it's a good time having it kind of nearer the end, but not right at the end, just so you can see how they overcome it afterwards.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah. I think I agree.
Yeah. Other than that, I don't think there was much. So
I think that's it. Really.
yeah. So I think
that's all from you.
that's all from me. Yeah. So yeah, I think we'd both recommend this movie. Do you want to close this out?
Yeah, sure. So thank you again for watching Lights Camera Podcast. What we say is please like, comment and subscribe, and also let us know of any movies which you think you'd like us to review or analyze. And yeah, see you on the next podcast. Bye.